It is great to be here in Staten Island today, to be here in Oakwood with so many leaders of this borough, but especially I think everyone agree on this point here. It is great to be with some unsung heroes because men and women of the Department of Transportation do extraordinarily important work for us. There are some who don't get all the recognition they deserve, and I want to turn to these guys and say, on behalf of the people of New York City, thank you. It's not just when they land airplanes on the Deegan that they should get credit, okay? Although they can do that for you, too, if you need it. But this is an example of the extraordinary work that happens every day. New Yorkers take it for granted. We shouldn't take it for granted. We should appreciate the people who do this work. By the way, we were talking about today is a good day to do this work because it's overcast, it's not too hot. But they're going to have to do the same work when it's 90 degrees, 95 degrees out in the middle of summer. I don't think that's something a lot of people in this town would love to go out there and volunteer to do. But these guys do it willingly, and they make our lives better as a result. And they do this work in good weather, bad weather, hot, cold. And it makes a huge difference because every one of us who drives on these roads depends on them to do all they can to make our lives better. Well, you can see right here, boy, that road right there is what we want to see more of and what we're committed to seeing more of. So this is an example. When they go to work, it changes our lives for the better. I want to thank them very, very much. Now, we believe so strongly in the importance of repaving our roads and what it means for the quality of life of all New Yorkers, that we are committing $242 million to repaving efforts. So that'll make a difference in neighborhoods all over the city. And this is about quality of life. This is about safety, for sure, because smoother roads are safer roads. It is also about our economy. We are competing with cities all over the world. A lot of them are investing a lot in their infrastructure. By the way, as I said in Washington last week, their national governments are helping them all the time to improve their infrastructure. We are fighting hard in Washington right now for the kind of federal support for our roads and our bridges and our highways and our mass transit that this city and other cities used to have in the past, and we haven't had enough of lately. We're going to fight to change that. But in the here and now, we're using our own resources and stretching them as far as we can because we need to protect our economy and build our economy, and good roads is a crucial part of that. Now, let me acknowledge some of the people with me. Others will be speaking in a few moments. You'll hear from our Transportation Commissioner. She's doing a fantastic job. You'll hear from Polly Trottenberg in a moment. I want to thank a great leader in the DOT. I know Polly depends on him quite a bit. I also want to say his formal title is Deputy Commissioner for Roadway Repair and Maintenance. He's also my Deputy Commissioner for Italian Culture. And he has one of maybe the best names in all of government, Galileo Orlando. Thank you. And I want to thank the Borough Director of Staten Island for Roadway Repair and Maintenance, Manny Stratakis. Thank you for your great work. I want to thank some of the elected officials who are with us. You're going to hear from some, but I also want to thank Assemblymember Joe Borelli for all he does for us in Albany and here. And Councilmember Debbie Rose for her great work on behalf of the community. Thank you, Debbie. Now, we had a long winter, my friends. This was a real tough one in terms of what it did to our roads. A lot of storms, a winter that went late, cold weather that went late. You'll hear from the commissioner about what it meant, but it really added additional challenges. And we know what happens in winter. By the way, a lot of the places we're competing with around the country, in the Sun Belt, for example, they don't have this particular challenge. They have a much easier circumstance. We have so many blessings here in New York City, but the winter brings with it huge challenges for our infrastructure and certainly wreaks havoc on our roads. And then we get the potholes that all drivers in this city have to deal with. And we know how frustrating it is. As someone who drove myself until very recently, I understand very humanly all the challenges that we face with potholes in the city and what it does to our cars. And we're adamant about trying to not only fill the potholes quickly, and I think DOT's done an outstanding job at doing all they need to do in the short term, but getting ahead of the problem and fixing the problem on a bigger level with repaving. Now, I felt that. I felt that as a driver. I felt that as a citizen of this city. And I didn't really need a lot more motivation, but it's always good to have people who give you the message clearly, who make very clear what they think we need to do. And no one did that better than the borough president of Staten Island. You'll hear from him in a moment, but I want to say as we went into this budget, he sent the message loud and clear, and I hope, do we have the poster with us again today? I'd like to just show you there on the left. That is the official sign that's going to be on eBay one day. That's going to, all proceeds will go to the city treasury. That's the official signed Jimmy Otto special there. That was his message when we said we were ready to invest in our roads. He said, pave, baby, pave. He stole that from Sarah Palin, but that's okay. But he did say, if you see the signature there, the quote, he said, Mr. Mayor, you didn't create this problem, but you are the one to begin to fix it. And I take that admonition, that mission to heart. We have to fix it, and we're making the investments that are going to make a huge difference. Now, let me explain. $242 million, what does that mean? Well, it means enough to resurface 2,500 lane miles through fiscal 17. 2,500 lane miles is as if you had built a road from this exact point all the way to Las Vegas. That's how much we will be repaving over these next 2 years. This year it begins in earnest. You'll see major repaving projects in every borough. We're getting to work on the FDR, which is long overdue, Kings Highway in Brooklyn, Hillside Avenue in Queens, Clove Road right here in Staten Island, and Westchester Avenue in the Bronx are a few examples of major roads that really need the help, and we'll get to work starting this year. Next year we'll continue and deepen this effort. And this will be, between this year and next year, the biggest commitment and the most lane miles repaved since 1991. That is going to make a huge difference in this city. Over the next decade, we are committing $1.6 billion for road resurfacing. That is a very substantial amount of money that will make a huge difference. So we'll keep filling the potholes every time they crop up, but we want to more and more get to this core solution and go further. We know when all this is done, we're going to have a different city and a better city, because at the end of fiscal 17, this plan will allow us to have about 80% of our roads rated in good repair. It's a substantial change from where we are now. Now we're rated around 71%. We're going to take that up to 80% and keep going from there. Again, that's part of what makes the city safer. We'll be taking other steps as well. Clearer road markings, clearer crosswalks. Something a lot of people around the city have asked for to improve safety. We're going to be working on that as well. So this is about the quality of life. This is about our future economically. And here, Staten Island, people will feel the difference. They're going to feel it with every street that turns into a good, smooth street like what you see right behind us. Let me say a few words in Spanish before I invite up a couple of my colleagues. Para seguir siendo una ciudad de primera clase en el mundo, Nueva York necesita vías de primera clase. Estamos invirtiendo más de $240 millones para reparar miles de millas de calles y carreteras. Las vías estarán en la mejor condición que han estado en 10 años, y eso ayudará a nuestra ciudad a crecer y prosperar. With that, I want to just say I have such admiration for the work our Transportation Commissioner is doing. She's got a big job. If ever there was one, this is one of the big jobs in this city, to keep this place running, keep it safe. I want to thank her for the great job she's doing. Our Transportation Commissioner, Polly Trottenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I won't lie. This is a happy day for me. It is pretty exciting that the mayor is giving us the opportunity to increase over the next 2 years the number of lane miles we are going to resurface around the city by 500. That is going to mean incredible improvements in roads all over the city, all 5 boroughs. And you mentioned some of them in all the 5 boroughs. I wanted to highlight a few more we're going to do here in Staten Island. Clove Road, Rockland Avenue, Arthur Kill Road, New Dorp Lane, Bay Street, ones that, believe me, we hear a lot about. And I want to thank the borough president, because we've had many discussions about roadway conditions here in Staten Island, and a point he made that we're really going to try and honor with the new resources the mayor has given us to really particularly focus our resurfacing efforts on the roadways that people drive on the most, that we all hear the most about. So we're really going to try and maximize our bang for the buck with the resources you've given us, Mr. Mayor. We are very appreciative, and I just want to take a second, too, to also thank the incredible men and women who do our roadway work under Galileo's leadership. As the mayor said, they are out in all kinds of weather, and when they're not doing roadway work, they're rescuing people who've landed on planes, and they're all over the city ready to step in on all kinds of emergencies. The work can be tough and it can be dangerous, and I'm personally, and I know the mayor is too, so grateful for the work these public servants do. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. He's known for his colorful phrases, for his exceptional use of social media, and for his great leadership. I want to thank the borough president. We have worked together for many, many years, and he has said to me time and again, there's so much that has to be done in Staten Island, and we can do it. He has an optimistic spirit about what can be done to make this borough better, and I have to tell you, he calls frequently. He puts a lot of ideas on the table, and I can say across our administration, we have tremendous respect for the borough president, and we answer that call willingly, and we look forward to deepening this partnership on behalf of the people of Staten Island. Borough President Jimmy Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one, yeah, thank you, Andrew. The Pave Baby Pave sign has gotten a lot of attention, and deservedly so. But there's another sign that I've been carrying around these last months to civic associations, to community boards, to Chipotle, to church, because at all those locations, Staten Islanders have come up to me and my colleagues in government and asked us about the conditions of our roads. And this is the sign I've been carrying around, because what I've tried to express to Staten Islanders is that we didn't get into this position simply over this past winter. We didn't get to this position overnight. We got into this position because for almost a decade and a half, we didn't put the investment into our roads. And our roads are no different than your car, than your home, or your bodies. If you neglect them, at some point they will break down. And DOT for a long time has had this threshold. 1,000 lane miles a year must be resurfaced to maintain a good condition. And if you can tell by this one, we've missed the mark.
Just step a little over here so they're here.
So,
giving you the sideways mic.
Thank you. So this is why we got into this condition. These gaps underneath this green line, I think the City Council estimated around 2,000 lane miles that we have not resurfaced. So that meant we had older streets that were more vulnerable. And when you get to really difficult winters, this is what's going to happen. Now, aside from the guys behind me, I'd like to think that we have more understanding of Staten Island roads than just about anyone. And for the longest time, the problem on Staten Island roads, let's say from 1999 to 2007, were really the byproducts of overdevelopment. So you had the utility cuts. You had plumbers, contractors ripping up our roads. And in 2008, this started manifesting itself. And I'll show you the letters to former Deputy Mayor Schuyler from October of 2008, from January of 2009, from August of 2009. Staten Island elected officials started saying to the administration, we need more capacity to pave roads, additional roads. And the answer was no. And for us to get out of this situation, for us to get better roads, we need an extraordinary commitment of resources. And it's this mayor, it's Bill de Blasio with this commissioner, Polly Trottenberg, that is making that commitment. And we on Staten Island are absolutely grateful for it. It will not get better overnight, but it is going to get better. And it's going to get better because we're going to resurface a lot more lanes. Andrew, can I have this one? This one talks about some Staten Island specific numbers. I think we did 122 lane miles last year on Staten Island. I'm sorry.
A little lower.
So I don't want to block Andy, and I don't want to block
Just
Debbie.
once, and he will. Here, let me
Go
help
ahead.
you.
There you go.
I'm going to be your.
I'll tell you.
He doesn't understand visuals. He just doesn't.
Vanna White has nothing on you, sir. My point was being that we're looking at 168 lane miles and then 220 lane miles the following year on Staten Island alone. That is an extraordinary amount of resurfacing. And again, I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Commissioner Trottenberg and her team. I want to thank all the men and women behind me who do that. This is another graphic example. I'm like the guy who used to be the sign man at Shea Stadium. Mr. Mayor?
This is really getting a little extreme.
One more. Previous administration, current administration. What the next 2 years will be above the green line. That is all the difference in the world between good roads on Staten Island and New York City and not. And I want to thank you. And I will just close by saying all the good things that the mayor and the commissioner said about the men behind me are true, with the exception of Vinny Salenti. He wasn't talking about you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vinny, I'm sorry you had to hear that. That was unauthorized. You know, I feel now we have to show off our beautiful graph here. Polly, if you go to that side, I'll come to this side. Now, we're very proud of this progress that will be made in terms of the number of streets rated good, but also you see the increase in lane miles that will be addressed compared to the past. So this is going to make a huge difference. I also want to note, one of the things we talked about in the budget presentation was the need to focus on our capital investments. And this is true more than ever in this city. So much of what you hear from your constituents, I hear all over the city, is that we've got to focus on roads, we've got to focus on affordable housing, we've got to focus on schools where they're needed. These capital investments are a huge priority in this budget, and reworked the budget fundamentally to emphasize the capital investments more than ever because the need is so deep. With that, I want to bring up another good friend. We all served in the council together, and he has been, not only was he a great member of the council, he has been a great member of the New York State Senate and one who has time and again brought people together in a bipartisan consensus, made sure that New York City's reality was understood in Albany. He's been particularly a champion for public education. I want to thank him for all he has done for all of us. Senator Andrew Lanza.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all. Tom Cocola, it's great to see you as well, and thank you for the service to our borough that has meant so much. I had the privilege this morning of sharing an espresso, a double espresso. Double espresso with Mayor de Blasio. And he told me, lose the suit, get some dungarees on, and some construction boots. So to quote one of my favorite movies, I wore this ridiculous outfit for you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful.
You know, they say a picture says 1,000 words, and certainly that graph there speaks of the 1,000 miles that will be improved throughout our city. And this is welcome news for the people not only of Staten Island but across the city. Our roads are critically important, and it's impossible for me to really add to what Borough President James Otto has said already, our Commissioner, and Mayor de Blasio. They've really framed the issue, and they've talked about the solution, and thank you for the commitment. But I just want to say this. Our roads, as they have indicated, are critically important to commerce across the city and to the quality of life for people from Tottenville to St. George and every single borough. And to me, the state of our roads is one of the most visible indications of the general state and welfare of our city. And Jimmy Otto pointed out the problem. I am thankful to the mayor that he's not focused on how we got here, but what we're going to do about it. This is a tremendous investment in our infrastructure. And whenever you invest in infrastructure, you receive dividends. Every single one of our citizens receives a dividend. The city receives a tremendous dividend in terms of its health and its prosperity. And so, Mayor, I just want to say, and to the Commissioner, I want to thank you for this very sizable and important and timely investment in our road infrastructure. It could not have come at a better time, and as I've said, this is going to improve life across this city. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Last but not least, he is primarily known for his prowess on the softball field, but he's also a fine public servant by day. He's a double threat. I want to thank Steve Matteo for his partnership on so much of the work we've done. It's an honor to be in your district. And thank you for being another one of the voices that helped us to get to this day.
Thank you,
Councilman Steve Matteo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome to my district. I want to begin by thanking everyone here, but I just left City Hall with my partner in crime up there, Vinny Ignizio, and he deserves a lot of credit. So I want to make sure that we thank him, who's been a tireless leader for the South Shore. I want to thank the men and women behind me as an office that has sent them over 500 potholes probably in the last 2 months. You have gone to every one of them, and we appreciate it. I know you can't stand my letters and emails, but we have a collective effort, and you have done a tremendous job, so thank you. You know, as the borough president said, we've had to catch up for the last few years, and one thing the borough president didn't mention was our office when he was then a council member, along with the Staten Island delegation, Councilmember Rose and Ignizio, we had to put in our own money, capital money, to get lane miles from, I think it was 98 to back to the threshold of 118, and that was just for us just to keep the status quo, and obviously the status quo has not been working. So this much needed resources, Senator Lange just said, couldn't come at a better time. Our roads need it. Staten Island deserves smooth, safe roads, and working together in this collective effort, we're going to make sure that happens. I want to thank Borough Commissioner Tom Cocola, working with myself just about every single day on the weekends. There is not a day that we don't discuss a road or a pothole. You know, the collective effort to begin wear and tear repairs as well. So we're not just doing pothole after pothole. We're making an effort just to make sure that our roads are safe, are stable, and we're gonna move forward together. I want to thank you, Mr. May, for hearing us. Thank you, Commissioner, for hearing us. We on Staten Island work together in just about every local Staten Island issue that pertains to our constituents. So I want to thank my colleagues here as well, Joe Borelli and Debbie Rose, and of course the Borough President and Senator Lanzer. So thank you for hearing us. It's a great day for Staten Island. Let's get those roads paved. Thank you.
All right, let's start with questions on topic, and then we'll do off topic. Yes, sir.
Whose fault is it that the DOT was not able to meet the goals of 1,000 lane miles in many of those years dating back to 2000?
As the borough president said, and the senator said, we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards. We obviously understand that we have an aging infrastructure, and we understand until we change things at the federal level in particular, and we get a real commitment to infrastructure again on a national basis, we have to do all we can with the resources we have. That's why we have gone even farther with capital investments in our budget. So I don't look backwards. I'm looking at how we can now fix this problem faster and faster. I want to remind you that Commissioner Trottenberg and her team and these great working men and women have done an extraordinary job with the resources they already have, getting a lot more done. So, one, we're trying to do the work better every single day, and the pothole numbers have been outstanding. But two, they just plain needed more money to get to the heart of the problem, and that's what we're committed to. On topic. On topic.
Talk a little bit about overall plans for Staten Island, how you serve Staten Island overall.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a whole host of things that we are doing that have a very important impact on Staten Island. Obviously, this is a borough, as Anna likes to remind me, that needs to rely on vehicles, private vehicles, more than some other parts of the city. So this effort to make sure we're constantly filling the potholes, repaving the roads, is obviously particularly pertinent to Staten Island. What we've done with the 24-hour ferry service, we're very proud of that. I want to thank the elected officials who called me every 24 hours to remind me about the importance of the 24-hour. You know, I didn't mind. I did not mind being called every 24 hours. Did you have to call at 3 a.m. to say, this is the kind of time we should have? So we're very proud of that. As I said about something near and dear to my heart, our pre-K effort, Staten Island has done particularly well as part of our pre-K expansion, and we've gotten a great response here. The same with our after-school effort for kids at the middle school level. Affordable housing effort is going to have a very big impact on Staten Island. You know, the borough president has put forward some very bold ideas about what we can do going forward in terms of some big capital projects that could profoundly improve life for Staten Islanders, and we're engaged with him on that. So I think that the fact is that, you know, our team is focused, and one of the things the borough president's been very clear about, wanting commissioners to attend to a set of issues that he's concerned about, the other electeds are concerned about, and I've heard from your mouth directly that the commissioners are constantly attending to that list of concerns. So we feel very good about the package of things we're doing to improve life in this borough. Anna.
So,
You're supposed to start by saying, you know, Staten Islanders depend on their private vehicles more than other boroughs.
So one of the things that you guys have all been saying is that there's been a lot of local advocacy on this issue, and I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about, one, whether or not this would have happened if there had not been a lot of pushing, and two, whether you think that, like, perhaps you have any plans to speak with local Staten Islanders who are not in office, town halls, maybe coming here, shaking some hands more often, perhaps on the South Shore where you haven't gone as much, and whether or not you think
Are you
that...
being the witness?
Get as much back into this question.
I think let me start with what you got there. Again, when I was public advocate, I remember when I first ran for public advocate, the question, you know, would I come out to Staten Island regularly? I was very proud to do that as public advocate. I've been proud to do that as mayor. I'll be doing a lot more of that. And there's every single day, including on my subway ride in this morning, I spend a lot of time with everyday New Yorkers, and I'll do that in formal ways, informal ways. I look forward certainly to open forums in different neighborhoods, whether it's a town hall meeting or other types of approaches. It's something, it's not only part of the job, it's something I believe in. And remember, as my colleagues know, all of us who started out together as council members, you don't do this work if you don't want to spend time listening to what everyday people feel and believe are solutions. I started out going door to door in my neighborhood, both when I ran for school board and when I ran for city council. And one of the things that's striking is you don't just hear complaints. A lot of times your fellow citizens have some of the best ideas about what we can do. And you got to stay connected. And it's part of why I go back to the neighborhood I come from all the time, because that's, you know, my home base, and I always want to hear from people, and I see people I've known for years and years. And so there's lots of ways to stay connected. But yes, I look forward to spending time all over the borough, including the South Shore. Look forward to any number of different forums where I'll get a chance to hear people's concerns. On the first part of the question, this is a important point in sort of public life, political life. I knew we had an infrastructure problem, and I knew we had to do something different. I give Polly a lot of credit for saying, here's ways we can get something done. I give my team at City Hall a lot of credit for saying, hey, you know what? There's more and more capital needs. We need to find a different approach that's going to allow us to do more on the capital side than we have done historically. But I can also say with assurance, when elected officials are both friends and people you respect and incredibly persistent, it helps. It helps focus energy, because one of the challenges in my particular role is there is, 1,000 issues every day and 8.5 million people to think about. And I commend the persistence of my colleagues here, because it does help you think, okay, let's make sure we're covering all the bases that need to be covered. It's a good thing. It's democracy as it's supposed to be. So I think they've been very helpful in terms of helping us figure out what are the things we need to prioritize for Staten Island. Did you have something else?
Well, do you have any specific plans to come to Staten Island and actually talk to Staten Islanders in the next month? Like, any plans?
Again, we did dinner at Jimmy's mother house, apparently. So he said his mother's house on Sunday. A Sunday. One of these Sundays. Okay. Again, Anna, you are a picture of consistency. We announce our plans for the week ahead or the day ahead as they are developed. I will certainly be here a lot. We got you. Let me see if there's anyone else on talking. Matt.
As you said, you were a driver yourself for a long time.
Yes.
You've probably driven here presumably today. You've been out here a few times. Have you noticed yourself the condition of roads in recent times as you've been traveling?
Unquestionably. And part of why Polly doesn't even know the half of it, because in some of the budget meetings she wasn't there, as I was the hardliner on this topic, because I've seen it, I've experienced it. I pride myself, because of the time I spent as public advocate driving myself around, in having a very, very strong sense of the roads and highways of the city. I have my own personal list of highways that one should not go on if you ever want to get where you're trying to get. We all have that. Any good driver has that. And my shortcuts and my favorite roads and everything else. But one thing that became abundantly clear to me is over the years things have gotten tougher. And it doesn't surprise me. Aging infrastructure, lack of federal investment, it stands to reason the situation will get worse. But it's now, on top of what it's done to the quality of life and safety for people, this economic competitive issue is a real challenge, because we are in economic competition in a way we have never been before. We're in a globalized world. Nations are competing with nations. Cities are competing with cities. We are competing with London, with Shanghai, with a lot of other places. And a lot of them have better infrastructure. Again, why? Their national governments prioritize infrastructure investments for their leading cities. That being said, as much as I'm unhappy with how we got here, I will say, based on the conversations on Wednesday in Washington, with the Republican chair of the most important committee on infrastructure in the Senate, Senator Inhofe, and the Republican chair of the most important committee in the House on infrastructure, Congressman Schuster, I think there is a beginning of movement towards a long-term, more robust transportation bill. And the House voted this week for a 2-month extension, which could be the gateway to a long-term solution. So something's beginning to happen. I was very proud to stand with Republican mayors and Democratic mayors and business leaders in a coalition to get that new transportation bill. I want to give you an example of what that could mean. The president has a proposal, a 6-year transportation bill. If the president's proposal was adopted, we estimate that the impact on the New York metropolitan region, the increased funding per year would be at least $1.2 billion for each year of 6 years. Just using a broad formula, I would say in that context, New York City would get at least $500 million more a year. So in a 6-year plan, for example, $3 billion more. Now, I think Polly Trottenberg, if she was handed $3 billion more dollars, would know what to do with it. And certainly our friends at the MTA would know what to do with it. So I think it is essential that once we have said, okay, we have gone to the furthest extent a city could possibly go to address these issues. We have bulked up our capital spending. We've put our lane miles commitment up higher than it's been. But now we've got to get that federal solution to be a part of what happens going forward. It has to be a bipartisan effort. That will be the game changer for New York City, and I'm going to keep working with my colleagues to achieve that. Please.
Hold off on making this kind of investment coming into office because you were waiting on something from the feds?
No, I think we needed to figure out what would work, and we also needed to figure out the amount of capital spending that we thought was appropriate. And in this year's budget process, unlike last year, and also, of course, we had the 10-year capital plan this year. That wasn't true last year. But we came to the conclusion that we had to think about capital dollars differently, which is why we have the $500 million capital stabilization fund on the expense side to protect and buffer and hedge that capital spending. It's a different way of thinking about what we can do, but obviously we have decided the future of this city depends on extensive capital investments. We can't wait for Washington. Right now, we got to get Washington in the game going forward, because even this is not going to take us all the places we need to go. But that's what occurred to us, that we needed to go much farther on capital, and we found a way to do it that was different than what was done in the past. Please.
And I was just going to say, in the first budget the mayor inherited, just on this particular issue, we weren't even supposed to reach the 1,000 lane miles, right. And that was the increase from, I forgot the number, So yeah, to 1,000. So even in the very first budget, there's been an allocation of resources. But as we said, it took us to the status quo of 1,000. We need to go beyond that, and that's what we're doing in the next 2 years. So even in your first budget, you put in additional money.
Your sense of the history and facts.
Coming back to me.
Aaron.
Just to follow up on that, you said you had your own personal list of highways never to go on. Can you give us some examples of those?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Cross Bronx Expressway. Number one. Number one. There is no reason to go there unless you have no other choice. I love the Bronx, but that road is not a good road to go on. I have strong views on this. You want to ask the positive? Do you want to ask a positive? What's a great road? Thank you for asking. 10th Avenue, Manhattan, although it's been, a lot of construction lately. 10th Avenue moves beautifully. It's one of my personal favorites.
Which borough is the worst as far as potholes?
As far as potholes, that's a factual. I don't have enough. I mean, I've traveled all over, and I think it's a problem everywhere. But is there a formal answer to that question?
I won't say there's a formal one. I think we're doing a lot of pothole work in all.
We're doing a lot of pothole work in all 5 boroughs. Okay, on topic, going once. On topic, going twice. Let's go to off topic.
Mayor, I wanted to ask
and
you.
We're glad to see you.
Yes, we are.
Live and well.
So I wanted to ask you about your new press secretary.
Yes.
Karen had to add, if you just want to comment generally,
Sure.
but also I wanted to ask you, she deleted her Twitter account last night, and I'm wondering if you have any sense of why that is or what you think of that. And also, one of her most recent tweets, she called positive train control a dud. So I'm wondering if you agree or what you make of that.
Okay, so I didn't know she had chosen to do that, but I think it is normal when someone is about to enter public service that they leave their past personal opinions behind because they're about to be part of an administration. I'm a fan of positive train control. I think it's necessary. You'll have a chance to ask her directly what she means and what she feels. But she's done a lot of work on issues around the country, obviously, including through her work with U.S. Conference of Mayors. Look, Karen's someone I have worked with for many years. First worked with her back in the late 1990s at HUD. Tremendously talented woman, very forceful, energetic leader. And we all did great work. I mean, there's a great group of people I worked with at HUD, and I thought the world of her. We remained friends ever since. And I think she's going to be a great addition to our team.
There's a lot of concern.
And you're supposed to start by saying, on Staten Island.
I was just about to say that. There's a lot of concern on Staten Island.
There we go.
About a slew of bomb threats that have been called into schools. 8 bomb threats to 4 schools in the last week. What is the city doing? What would you tell parents who are concerned?
First, on what the city's doing. So one individual has been apprehended, one young person. There'll be very serious consequences for that young person, both in terms of the justice system and school disciplinary actions. If anybody else is involved, there will also be very serious consequences for them. The central message here is this is not a joke. If particularly some of our young people think this is an idea of a prank or a good time, that's unacceptable, and they need to understand there will be very serious consequences, and they'll wish they hadn't done it. So my message could not be clearer. Don't play around. This is serious stuff. It causes tremendous concern among parents and obviously our school personnel and the students themselves. So this has to stop, and I am convinced it will stop, and NYPD is all over it. In terms of what I'd say to parents, and I am still for the next few weeks a New York City public school parent myself, this, sadly, it's not the first time we've seen these kind of calls. I think we continue, obviously our schools continue to do their work. Kids should go to school. We will deal with this problem. Grace.
The consultant, that the city hired to do a study of our website and also has done a lot of work for the company owned by the founder of NICLAS. And a spokesperson from your office said you know, this, it would be a First Amendment violation if we were to disqualify somebody from doing work like this based on their personal views. But for supporters of horse-drawn carriages, they say this shows that clearly there's a slant in favor of ending the industry. Can you sort of speak to any conflicts of interest for this consultant and whether you're concerned about it?
Yeah, I don't know the details, to be very straightforward. I just don't know how the consultant selection process went, so I can't speak to that. I think there's a legitimate point to say if someone has personal views, that doesn't stop them from doing a good job, and we do have to be sensitive to that. I don't think we ever get into a individual opinion litmus test when we're making decisions like that. But I think the bottom line here is we're trying to find a fair solution going forward. You know, I obviously have strong views on the matter. I've been very consistent in 2013 and since on what I think. But we're going to work with all the stakeholders and certainly work with the City Council to figure out a fair outcome. But I just don't know enough about the details to comment further.
But does it seem, I mean, not knowing the specifics of how that person was chosen, but I mean, it would strike me as sort of, it's one thing to say there are First Amendment issues broadly if they took a position on some other unrelated topic, but if they're meant to be sort of an impartial...
Again, not knowing literally the specific work they've been chosen for and how the selection process went, I just can't comment. But I can get more information, then I'd be happy to. Yes, sir.
The state recently rejected 15 charter schools, including 12 in the city. Some say the unprecedented move was politically done, bolts in the notion that charter cap doesn't need to be lifted. What are your thoughts on the matter?
I think the State Board of Regents and the State Department of Education have been in the center of the decisions over the last decade or two that have brought us to the point we are today around the state in terms of the number of charters we have. I don't think anyone would say they have historically had a bias against charters. In fact, they've obviously facilitated the growth of charter schools in this city and in this state. I take them at their word. They have a high quality standard, as they should. And I like to remind people that charter schools, like any other part of human life, you know, are a diverse part of our educational sector. Some charter schools are great. Some aren't as high quality. Some have one approach, some have another approach. And I think this just reflects the judgment of the Regents and the State Education Department about those individual applications. Yes.
Hi, Mayor. How open are you to endorsing, say, Senator Sanders or Governor O'Malley, who are perceived to be to the left of Secretary Clinton and have expressed progressive visions like the one yourself?
Yeah, you know, I've started with a very simple assumption. And I've said this from day one. I have immense respect for Secretary Clinton. Obviously, you know, a personal relationship with her, but I think she's one of the great public servants we have. And I think she's incredibly experienced and obviously qualified for the office she seeks. And there's specific things that I and a lot of other people would like to hear her speak to, and I'm optimistic she will. I've been very, very pleased with her statements on criminal focused. Yes.
Well, I have two questions. One, I was wondering if you could tell us what you and Senator Lanza discussed today over coffee. And two,
sure, all of it, absolutely.
And Albany-related question, you know, the Assembly is not supporting your call for permanent mayoral control. I was wondering if you could talk about that. Do you feel that you didn't do a good enough job convincing them? Is there something else at work here? Are you still going to try to push the Senate and Governor, or is this kind of a fait accompli this year?
Okay, thank you for the options. So I'm going to tell you exactly what Andy Lanza and I talked about. He said, do you want a single espresso or a double? I said, I want a double. He said, good espresso, right? I said, this is really good espresso. He said, do you like the olive bread? I said, yes, I like the olive bread, but I also like the prosciutto bread. You know, it's a very detailed conversation. You know, again, I want to respect the privacy of the conversation. I will simply say, Senator Lanza and I have a very long and deep working relationship. We talked about how we can work together to move things forward for this borough and this city. And I just want to thank him because, again, he's been one of the people in Albany, and Albany is a complicated place. But I don't know anyone who doesn't like Andy Lanza. I don't know anyone who doesn't respect Andy Lanza. I think he's one of the people that brings people together, so I want to thank him for that. On the Assembly, I think it was a perfectly sensible move. I believe mayoral control education should be made permanent. This is an area where I agreed with Mayor Bloomberg from the beginning that it was the right way to go. I always said I thought it could have been handled differently once it was instituted. But I thought that Mayor Bloomberg was right. I thought the legislature was right to renew it. I think it's right to renew it again. But really, something to me that is as proven as this should be made permanent. And the alternative of what we had in the past is thoroughly unacceptable. And I hope and I believe people in Albany get that what we had before did not work. It unfortunately was prone to corruption, did not lead to reform. It led to a school system that was paralyzed and politicized. We can't go back to that. So if we know we can't go back to that, and I don't know of any other form of educational governance out there, we should just make mayoral control permanent and then get on with the work of figuring out what we can do every day to make our schools better. But understanding there's different viewpoints, I think what the Assembly did was perfectly sensible. And I talked to Speaker Hastie, and I commend him for being a great leader and being practical. Governor, at the beginning of the year, said, let's do the 3-year renewal. Speaker very logically said, fine. The governor's put an idea forward. We'll agree with that idea. Now we have momentum. We've got 2 of the 3 players agreeing on 3 years. Why don't we all get there and move forward? And that would be a fair outcome for this city. Okay. Thank you, everyone.